It's full time.
Hello and welcome to Full Time, brought to you by AIA Vitality. It is now time for our preview into the prelims. Two incredible games coming up. It is going to be close. But before we do that, we go to this man who has been waiting for us all year. He's done an amazing job in the hub. Ayrton, Woolley, how are you, mate?
Going very well, thank you, Shane. How about you?
No, very good. Can't wait for these matches. I really do think both matches are pretty much going to come down to the final siren. It's going to be that close. Can't wait. It is the four best sides. I still don't know who's going to win. I don't know who's going to make the grand final, but that's why I think everyone's on the edge of their seats and we're going to love it.
Well, we're going to have to nail down some winners at some stage, but look at these matches. Port Adelaide, Richmond, Adelaide Oval Friday night, then Brisbane, Geelong, all of Queensland behind the Lions on Saturday night. Another big game. All of these clubs, I guess, have staked their claim at different stages, haven't they, Crawford? We'll start on Port Adelaide and Richmond. They played earlier this year. On that occasion, it was Port Adelaide who came out on top. Do you think that gives them a bit of confidence, and do you think it might be Port Adelaide again this time around?
A little bit, but they will have a bit of a different side, Richmond, that they're coming up against. The more I think about Port Adelaide, the more I like Port Adelaide, because I just think they're extremely tough around the footy. They've got great balance, which is one thing I've thought they've had all year. Defensively, I think they've improved through the roof, especially the last 4 or 5 games. They've really tightened up their defence and the way they zone the middle of the ground and help the defenders. The home ground factor's really important. So getting on the scoreboard nice and early and getting the crowd into it's going to really help. And the more I think about Port Adelaide, the more I think, hang on, I reckon they should be favourites for the premiership for 2020.
Big call, Crawford. Port Adelaide premiership favourites. Well, for what it's worth, I'm sticking with the Tigers. I've stuck with them all year. But teams tonight, no change to either side. We'll take a look now at the missing Tigers from last time these two sides met. And they were some big names. You can see there Basher Woolley along with Dion Prestia, Shane Edwards, the skipper Trent Cotchin, as well as some, key position players in Toby Nankervis and David Asprey. But Crawford, you're not sold on these names I'm hearing. What's going on there? There's some big names there.
Oh, no, they're a wonderful team. Hey, I grew up as a Tigers supporter, so I've got a lot of love for the Tigers. But, when I'm looking at both sides, and I've really sort of studied hard over the last, month and a bit, the Tigers, yes, they've got their strongest side in for a long time, which is great, but they're still not playing the footy they were this time last year. So they're still not connecting perfectly. The pressure's not there for 4 quarters. They're okay against the Saints. We're expecting them to bounce back, but they weren't convincing. Obviously against the Brisbane Lions, Brisbane found a way to outwork them, which is very rare when you come up against the Tigers. So I don't think their form is extremely convincing. Yes, it's still good. Yes, they're capable of winning the flag because they're the Tigers and they can get their mojo going. But I just keep coming back to Port Adelaide. I really do think they're so tough around the ball. If you can get your hands on the footy, around the stoppages, but most importantly, centre bounce, massive advantage. And when I look at Port Adelaide, I think they've got a bit of an advantage when it comes to that.
Crawford, a year we've had no crowds, well, basically no crowds for most of the season. Do you think that plays any part in this game?
Oh, well, it's definitely a home ground advantage. South Australians love their Aussie rules football. Port Adelaide supporters are going to be loud and they're going to be in this match. So I'm sure the players are going to really rely on the crowd getting into it and driving them hard. But my only concern with Port Adelaide is how have they handled the last 2 weeks? That, to me, is a real question mark. And if they've handled it well and haven't played the game before they get out there and they team really well, I can see them winning. Richmond, well, we know they've been building. Yes, they've got their best side in. Have they played their best footy? No, they haven't. So, they're going to have to against Port Adelaide. And there's every chance that they might be peaking perfectly, a bit like they did last year. So we're just going to have to sit back and enjoy this match. And it's on. It's a beauty.
Certainly one of the elements to watch will be the performances of the big forwards. Tom Lynch at one end, Charlie Dixon at another. Already, both coaches have been talking tough. Let's take a listen now to Damien Hardwick and Ken Hinkley.
It's just a part of his game. He was, I think, by far the best player on the ground on the weekend, and that aggression, exertion was part of it. Look, he was disappointed in the 50. There's no doubt about it. You look at his influence after that event. He tried to pay us back, which is really important. And what he brings to the side is the ability to get the ball to ground. But there's a massive contest there, I think, where young Patton ended up, getting his head split. That's what Tom brings. He brings aggression. He brings a guy that, if someone wants to take his space, good luck.
No. That's what key forwards do. Dimmer's right. Charlie at the other end, it's not dissimilar. And Tom Jonas will stand in the way of anything. Any of our defenders will stand in the way of anything, and as the Richmond players will. So we expect key forwards to play that way, and Dimmer does too. No, I want him to play his game, which is a similar vein. He crashes packs, he hits things, he likes it, he enjoys it.
Good fun there between Ken Hinkley and Damien Hardwick. We'll move on now to that other game between Brisbane and Geelong. Brisbane, of course, at home, but the Cats don't mind playing here, do they, Crawford? They've got a good record at the Gabba in recent times. They won their other clash this year. It was actually in Sydney, but this is their record in Brisbane. Geelong wins over North Melbourne, St Kilda, Essendon and Collingwood. Do you think that form line helps them?
Oh, look at those margins. They're massive margins. Absolutely. It gives you so much confidence as a team knowing that you can go somewhere and play great footy. I thought compared to Adelaide Oval, heading back to the Gabba, it was going to suit the Cats. They were awesome against Collingwood. They just totally smashed them. It was incredible to watch. Not great from a spectacle because we wanted to, two teams really going at each other, but they were just on. The way they moved the footy, the way they linked up beautifully, Dangerfield in that forward line. The thing is with the Cats, they've got the secret weapon. The coach played a lot of footy there. I punched on with him a few times there. And he said that he's got a bit of a secret weapon, which he's not actually revealing to us. But here he is in a press conference where he says he knows a bit more than others when it comes to the Gabba.
And as much as anything, there are some things that I have a theory on that I'm not prepared to sort of elaborate on publicly, but it's really just we played here 3 times and we played really well every single time. This is the 4th, so...
I don't know what the theory is, but it's a good theory because they keep winning and that's going to give them so much confidence. Yes, it's the Brisbane Lions. Brisbane haven't played perfect football all year. I reckon against Richmond it was as good as I've seen. So it looks as though they're starting to lift the level for finals, which is required. A bit like Port Adelaide, how have they handled the 2 weeks? They've had a lot of players who haven't played in prelims before. Have they played their match before they start? Yes, home ground advantage, which is big, but then Geelong will have no fears. Very experienced team. The thing with the Brisbane Lions, because Geelong set up so well when they don't have the footy, they've got to switch the play, but the play has to be continuous. So they've got to keep the ball moving. It can't be slow switches. It's got to be brave switching of the ball coming through the middle of the corridor. But they've got to keep the ball moving. So the defence of Geelong has to keep shuffling because there's some older types down there and you want to keep them moving. You want them to run. So I expect the Brisbane Lions to play some real fast and furious football at times. But you won't be able to maintain that for the whole match. Geelong are definitely in this match. I don't know which way to go. I really don't. I'm leaning towards Brisbane only because of the home ground factor, and I'm just expecting them coming off the break. As long as everything is perfect, they'll hit the ground running, and I reckon they can too, a bit like Port Adelaide, get a bit of scoreboard pressure on early, get the crowd up and about, get that belief going. And they might be really hard to peg back from there. But in saying that, I've got no confidence in this match. I think both can win, and I think both can still win the flag.
Well, just before we move on to Patrick Dangerfield, just something you said there piqued my interest in regards to Chris Scott. I'm going to go a bit off script here, actually, Crawford. Who was the scariest in that Brisbane side? Because they had a few blokes who didn't mind a bit of biff.
No, Chris Scott was. I'll tell you what, he gave me a few whacks with that elbow, throwing it back. Should have got 2 or 3 weeks at the time, but he always played on the edge. That's why you respected him. And I have no doubt Geelong will be playing on the edge this week to get themselves into a grand final. And wouldn't it be good to see the Cats in there? Paddy Dangerfield never played in the grand final. Imagine him grand final day. And he's already bulletproof. He flies around the field like Superman. So imagine him on grand final day, tucking the ball under his arm and just dominating. It'd be definitely a sight to see.
Certainly would. 4 losing preliminary finals for Paddy Dangerfield, 3 with Geelong, 1 with Adelaide. Let's take a closer look at his game last week, or his last few weeks. He went forward against Collingwood. He started there, and this is really interesting, Crawford. 67% game time in the midfield in the qualifying final against Port Adelaide, and then just 14% in the semi-final against the Pies. So Which way are you leaning this week? Do you think he starts forward again? Is that what you want to see, or do you think you need him back in the midfield?
No, I think he'll start in the middle. I really do. I think that's where you need him. Obviously, he can drift forward. And the wonderful thing Geelong have done with Paddy Dangerfield this year is, especially through that period where they had, 5-6 games in 30, to 40 days, really condensed period. They rested him a lot in the forward line. And the thing I love about Paddy Dangerfield, when the game was on the line throughout this year, he either went into the middle or he would take a big mark, he'd kick a beautiful goal. And I think his impact on the game was just incredible. So I'm expecting him to go wherever he's needed. I reckon he'll start in the middle. And then when they can, and if they get a feeling that the game seems to be going their way, I reckon they'll sneak him forward. And we know how dangerous, some of those goals he kicked from the boundary last week, incredible. I'm not sure he can kick 4 this week, but he is Paddy Dangerfield, so you just never know.
My only question mark about him going back to the midfield, Crawford, is the support for Tom Hawkins. Can they kick a winning score? Because we know how good they are defensively, Geelong, but have they got a score in them if Danger doesn't spend that time forward, do you think?
Yeah, you've got Tomahawk, you've got Gary Rowan. You always want your midfield, especially finals times, kicking some goals. So that'll be a real focus. At the end of the day, Port Adelaide, Richmond, Brisbane, Geelong, the game's going to be won at the centre bounce, OK? So you've got to have all your guns in there blazing. And that is why I'm leaning towards Port Adelaide, and that is why I'm leaning towards the Brisbane Lions. I just think stoppage work, and especially centre bounces, they're very, very good, especially at the Gabba. So I'm leaning that way. Confidence level very low, but I can't wait for these matches to get underway.
Certainly can't, Crawford. Starts on Friday night. Port against Richmond, then Brisbane up against Geelong. We'll be up there for 9 News on Saturday night at the Gabba. Then, of course, the grand finals coming soon too. Might just get a full house at the Gabba today. Pushed behind the scenes, I'm hearing, Crawford, to get a capacity crowd in of 40,000. So hopefully we get that for the spectacle. We've learnt, I guess, the pre-match entertainment this week. Do you know the DMAs, Crawford? Have you heard of them before? No,
but hey, Geronimo, yes, I'm a fan of Shepherd and the song Hey Geronimo, something like that anyway. But no, looking forward to that. Hopefully some firecrackers. We like firecrackers at night. And they're taking the turf up. What about that? They've taken the turf from the MCG and they're going to put it there at the Gabba. Why, I don't know, but anyway, why are they doing that?
I think it might have been a very clever piece of sponsorship. They knew that there'd be a little bit of outrage, and so they got their money's worth there, that particular sponsor.
They've got to watch those Queenslanders. They'll end up smoking that grass. I don't know what they're doing with the turf from the MCG heading up to the Gabba. The Gabba's a great surface as it is. But anyway, we're talking about it, so maybe from a sponsorship point of view, it's working.
And that note might just be a good way to finish, Crawford. I'll see you again next Thursday when we're previewing a grand final.
Just before you go, this weekend, what are your tips? Who are you picking?
I've stuck with Richmond right the way through. I think they're still the best team in the competition. This was the only game that I was really worried about them going to Adelaide, but I'm sticking with them. And I reckon Brisbane are going to ride the momentum here in their home state all the way to a grand final. I think that'd be a great grand final. Richmond up against Brisbane too, if that's the way it goes.
No, it'll be huge. Really looking forward to it. And we'll be back next week previewing the grand final. May the best teams win, whoever that may be, and can't wait for it. Good on you.